Well, hey everybody, this is Chris DeFurio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Glad you could join me today. Now, today's episode is brought to you by the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer from Voga Coffee. Now, the Ground Control Brewer is really changing the game when it comes to batch brew coffee. The SCA award-winning technology gives you control over such a vast array of flavors that you might not have ever thought possible from just one coffee. And having tasted this machine in action, I can tell you that it really is on another level and is a great way to set your coffee and your coffee bar apart. It's also really beautiful to look at on top of delivering an amazing coffee experience. And the quality of your beverage is really important right now, especially as people are getting more to-go stuff. And this machine is very versatile. It's not just able to brew batch brew coffee. It's also able to brew cold brew, tea, cocoa, large-scale batch iced lattes. It is a workhorse, and it is easy to train your staff on, easy to use. So if you want to bring your coffee and your guest experience to the next level, I highly recommend looking into the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer. Go find out more information over at their website, vogacoffee.com. That's VOGA coffee.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Flair Espresso. Flair Espresso is the maker of all manual lever presses that easily produce cafe-quality espresso in your home. I am thrilled with my Flair Pro 2, and I know that whenever I want to, I can make an amazing espresso for myself. And that's a good feeling because even after 20 years of being in coffee, I never had an espresso machine. It was too much money. It took up too much space. The increased utility cost. But with the Flair, it really mixes that convenience factor in that it's a small footprint and it doesn't cost a lot of money. It's really well made, and the shots that I'm making myself are just fantastic. So this is the kind of experience I think your customers would really appreciate, and I think you would really appreciate as well. Listeners to this podcast get 5% off their entire order, and this is already a fantastic price for such a great piece of equipment. So 5% off of your entire order by using the code KEYS2THEFLAIR at checkout. Again, that's code KEYS2THEFLAIR to get 5% off your entire order. I recommend this machine to everybody. I recommend it to you. Get yours today over at flairespresso.com. All right, everyone. So today we are going to be talking about job descriptions. We talked with Dave Stachowiak earlier this week on rebuilding your staff with excellence, how to make good hiring decisions and place people in positions that are actually going to fit them. There's a lot that goes into that. And one of the first steps is an exercise in writing a job description. And, traditionally speaking, job descriptions can be pretty cookie cutter. For a barista role, a lot of people actually look for a barista job description online. They look for templates for that type of thing. I'm fine with templates. I provide templates often for my consulting clients, but I also don't think that going into it, the mentality sometimes is, well, this will work because it's, universal. The baristas need to be this. Well, it's not necessarily true. You need to be able to forecast what you want from a barista based on what your vision is and what your values are and how you want people to be able to live out those values in your store. How do you want the manager to live out those values when it comes to tough customers or quality beverages and having sit-down meetings with their baristas? Think through your particular context and don't just fall victim to this idea of, well, if it works for another coffee shop, then it'll work for me. You need to have a lot of skin in this game of writing a job description. Even if this is your first coffee shop, you still have the ability to create a more specific and personalized job description. I say personalized to the business than you would if you took something offline and just hoped to attract the right people to your door. If you get a very general description, you're going to get very general people. That's kind of the rule. If you get creative and you get specific and you use language that will weed people out before they even apply, that don't align with your values, that's the kind of thing you want to do. I would recommend, first of all, that you start with your values. You start with what's important to you and your shop and what you want people to be able to resonate with, because if they don't share your same values, if they don't share the mission and the drive for this particular reason that you opened your shop, then what you say to them about the hard tasks in the shop, that's not going to resonate either. They're not going to be motivated to do the hard tasks as much because they're not really vibing with the vision. And I know that personally speaking, it's easier to do hard work when you know it's for a good cause or something that you believe in. And if it's the business, if you love the business and what they stand for, and just, that is a really good thing to put in your job description first. This is who we are, basically asking the question, is this who you are also? Then, apply within. In your job description, you're going to have an overview of the role. And in that overview, we tend to be a little idealistic in the role's description, and we don't let people in on some of the hard stuff that the role entails. If you want to weed out the people that aren't signing up for hard work, and personally speaking, I think that would be great to do, then talk about hard work in the job description. Talk about the fact that it can be very hard work and that it's also very rewarding. So you're balancing it. You're saying, here are the benefits. Here's the positive stuff. But, here's the reality of working in this role. So be realistic. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to talk explicitly about the kind of stuff you cleaned up in the bathroom the other day. But you can talk a little bit about it is tough, but it is rewarding. That might even be sufficient right there. Now, as you seek to write your job description, I think it's important as you start to list off the things that the person you're hiring is responsible for, that you don't create this monstrosity of a list that no human being could actually accomplish. When we create job descriptions, I think we have a tendency to, create them with the idea that, well, these are all the things I want them to do, so I'll leave it up to them to figure out how to do it. That's not their job necessarily, to figure out how to do it. You're in the middle of writing this job description. You have to figure out how this person is actually going to do it. Think of a job description almost like a business plan for a role. It's really proving the concept. Is this a role that's realistic? Is this a business that's realistic? Show me in the numbers. Show me in the time that you give this person that they're going to have the opportunity to meet with all their staff, do all of the P&L and ordering and inventory, and still work 30 hours on the bar every week. You only give them 10 hours a week to do all this extraneous stuff. You have to prove that something is going to work with the kind of resources that you have, both in time, money, attention. Do they have even the emotional capacity to be able to do this job? So don't go crazy with this. Be specific and strategic, and the role can build itself out over time, but don't beef it up right away with all the things you wish and hope a person would take off of your plate. Get the right things on there, and maybe the most urgent thing is to get off your plate, but think about, how is this person going to actually accomplish it? And also, how am I going to help them accomplish it? Because as we said on the show a lot, to be a hands-off leader is basically to be a derelict leader. It's to be somebody who's, you're abdicating your responsibility to lead your team. Something else that I would add in here is that you need to consider writing out how this person interacts with the rest of the staff. You need to consider how this person is not only upholding the values in that role, but to whom are they relating those values? So for baristas, for example, you are looking at them serving the customer, their peers, and their bosses. So you need to figure out how to put in the job description something that describes where they stand in the organization, how they relate to these other areas, and how that role serves the vision and the values as it relates to those people. The people that you're attached to, whether above or below you in the organization, are people that you serve. And then finally, when it comes to writing a job description, I think you need to have something that matches up well with other kinds of documents that you've got in your organization. So when you're writing this, you're listing out what people are responsible for. If they're responsible for, like, if it's bullet point 4, where it says, providing our guests with excellent hospitality, that bullet point should be something that you can elaborate on concretely with that barista. So what I mean by this is, you have all of these things that you want the baristas to be able to do. Are there accompanying documents or standard operating procedures and things like that? Is there more to the story than just that bullet point? Because if you leave it at just provide amazing hospitality, but there's no real training material on it or module on it, then you're not going to get people delivering amazing hospitality. You're just leaving it up to them to say, oh, yes, I agree. I think we should give amazing hospitality. Well, anybody can say yes to all these things and good, yes. But how do you keep them accountable? How do you provide tools and resources to develop them and support them in their pursuit of delivering that kind of service experience for the guests? And that's just one example. If they're going to handle cash well and you want them to be able to be responsible with the closing of the drawer, do you have any kind of training system in place or documents that are clear, updated, and people who can train them in that? Or are they just going to learn by osmosis from the most senior barista in a kind of unofficial way and make a ton of mistakes and feel bad along the way? Most of this stuff is really messy in a coffee bar. A job description is this really neat, organized list of stuff that we want, but then it's not really attached to much substance afterwards. So if you're going to write something like this, you have to have something to back it up. You have to have the training, the material, and the time and energy yourself to be able to support the successful execution of the things in your job description, or else it's really not worth writing at all, to be honest. Because when you leave people to flounder, even with the best job description, they're going to call BS on this, and they're going to leave. And unfortunately, that's the kind of thing that happens a lot in coffee bars. It doesn't have to. We want to get the right people, and then we want to treat them right, and we want to support them well, so that they can support the business and each other, and it works out for everyone in the end. So I hope that this was a helpful episode for you. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from Keys to the Shop.